Hello, Marky Dragon, also known as Marcus Eikenberry in real life, and I got a great question here. It's kind of a different one, and it's from someone named G. He says he's in his second year of college, student, and he has savings of about $10,000. Good job, by the way. You know, having $10,000 in your account, being that way from jobs through high school. Wow, that's really good money management. And he says, where do you suggest I go to become successful? And he says, I try to finish going to college and getting a job, etc., but to be honest, that's no fun. I want to invest, join a startup, etc. But where do I start with all that? Is that a chance of networking and location? Do I really need a college degree? Well, do you really need a college degree? The answer is no. But let me tell you about a friend of mine who his goal was or is to get into politics, and he decided that the best route for him to go to get into politics was for him to get his PhD, which means a lot of years of school, but he's a lawyer. I think he's now a professor of law, and he decided that that he really didn't want to practice law, but he wanted to make relationships with other people who would be political and have power in the political system here in the United States, and do that by going to a top tier 1 law school and making connections there while getting his degree, and having an educational background like that would really help with politics, especially having his PhD, and so that is one kind of way of looking at things, to where you need to have this he's using his degree in a way that wasn't intended and is not very much fun, but it's going to help him get to the end of where he wants to go with that. And who knows where he'll go with politics or whatnot, but we'll see. He's a very smart guy. So I think that I never went to college, but I don't consider myself to be the normal case either, because when I was 5 years old, I was doing my first entrepreneurial stuff. It wasn't, it wasn't, it's apparent to me now that I was just internally built for business and everything, and that is what I've always been destined to do, is to be an entrepreneur and to be self-employed, and I can work with another company or a team or whatnot, but I really enjoy working for myself and everything. Now, do I wish I had a college education? Yes, I do. And would my degree help me in what I am doing now? Well, just having the degree is something to be proud of. It's a sense of accomplishment. But the fact is that your degree most likely will not apply directly to what you do. And so maybe that's what you need to think about here is, what is it that you plan on doing? You're not focused in your question here. You're not like, well, I want to put it into a video game startup, or I want to put it into a technology startup, or I really like automobiles and I want to put it into some automobile startup or business or whatnot, or I want to open something like a mechanics shop, and I want to do that. The fact is that if you can identify now what you think you want to do, that you can make a living at, that's your passion, then that's where you should focus your next 2 years of college at, or university. And, get your degree in something that will be directly helpful to you. I can tell you this, that when I worked for the government, degrees meant a hell of a lot. And in that kind of environment, a degree is very, very valuable and gets you respect and gets you higher positions within the government. So I know I worked when I worked at Bonneville, which was part of the Department of Energy, that there were several people there who had PhDs. And I don't even know what their PhDs were in, whether or not it was related, but they all had very high positions with the company, and were making good money. You know, working a government job, it is possible to make $120,000, $130,000, $150,000 a year in the high-level positions, and so, you know, it is definitely worth something. But if you stumble across an opportunity that you think is the deal, that needs to be seized, go for it. I've done that a few times. Sometimes I was right, sometimes I was not. And just think about how much you're giving up by doing that. So I can tell you that, let me equate this to something else. I was a bus driver for TriMet in Portland, Oregon. I drove bus for about 4 years. I thought that when I was a kid, when I was in, I think, 8th grade, we took this test. And these tests were designed to help us identify maybe some career choices that would be good for us. And mine did not say anything about being an entrepreneur, nothing at all. Mine said, number 1, police officer. Number 2, bus driver or truck driver. Number 3, firefighter. That's what mine came out to be. And I thought to myself, that's really kind of like, you know, what a lot of people say, you know, as small kids, when they grow up, they want to be something like that, you know, police officer, firefighter, stuff like that. And so I didn't know that whether or not I really believed that. Well, later on, when I was out of school, and I think that I was around 18 or 20, I applied at the State Police Academy, and they gave me an acceptance letter so that I could go for training to be a state police officer. My wife at the time said, though, that would be too upsetting to her. You know, she would fear for my safety and everything, and that would cause her a lot of stress. And so I decided that I would not pursue that. Then, at the time, I was driving truck, and I was doing air freight. I was, independent driving truck, and I hadn't even thought about at that time that I was doing one of those things that was on the list of things that were suggested for me, and that I had applied to be a police officer. I knew I couldn't be a firefighter. I've always had some lung problems, and I knew that I couldn't handle the smoke, and that would be a big issue for me. And so then I applied to be a bus driver, and I applied when I was 20. You had to be 21 to be a bus driver, and I just asked for an interview. My father knew everybody in town, and I asked him if he would just make a phone call to the general manager of TriMet, and not to try and get me a job, but just to get me an interview. And so it was like a couple days later, I get a call saying, please come down and test. And so I had to take a test. And it was a written test. And I took this written test, and then they asked me to apply, that they were going to hire me. And, well, actually, it wasn't quite that. They asked me to apply, and then I had an interview, and it was an interview by committee. There was 5 people in there. It was really interesting. I had never experienced anything like that before. And so there was, a couple of office people in there, probably from human resources. There was a supervisor, in there, a guy who supervises bus drivers, typically out in the field, and then there was a bus driver and maybe a trainer in there. So it was kind of this mix of different people who were a good kind of representation of the face of the company that interviewed me. And I guess I interviewed well because they hired me. And I started training before I was even 21. You had to be 21 to get your passenger endorsement, but you could have your permit at 20, at 18. And so I got my permit right away, and for my passenger endorsement, I already had all of my other stuff. And then I decided that, I made it through training, and then it was like 1 week after my 21st birthday, I was out on my own route. I was the youngest bus driver they had ever hired. And so, that was kind of a badge for me and everything. And I, though 4 years later, I decided that I was going to take a chance. And I asked for a sabbatical at the company, extended leave. And they were really hesitant to give it to me. But I said, hey, I want to go and try and do this new company. And it was my computer store. And I was already making, a couple $1,000s a month doing computer stuff on the side while I was bus driving. And I thought, there's an opportunity for this, and I really want to do this. So I opened the company, and I got them to give me a 6-month leave, and they did. And then at 6 months, I asked them to extend it for another 6 months, and they said no. And so I quit my job with them. And but then the company, it went really well, but I didn't know how to manage a company, and it eventually went bust. And it didn't go bust because we didn't have the sales coming in and the money coming in. It was because I didn't know how to manage it. And that's something that if I had gone to college and learned, business management and everything, how to do all of that stuff, I would not have had that issue. I probably would have handled it all much better. And so that's one place where education, this is a couple of things. Education could have really benefited me there, and I took a chance, and I left a job that I could have been at for the rest of my life as a career, and could have, done quite well there. I loved my job there. I really did. It was a lot of fun being a bus driver, and I loved working what was called the extra board, where I'd get a lot of overtime, and I would just be told to show up at like 1 p.m. or something like that, and then we would wait for a bus to break down or a driver to call in sick or whatnot, or something special come up, so I would just run out and do that. Like there was one time where there was a big fire, and the Red Cross asked for a bus that had heat because it was cold out, and a bus that could be temporary shelter for the people displaced by the fire. And so I drive down there, and I just idle the bus for the next 10 hours, just keeping the heat on, keeping everybody warm, talking with people, and that's all I was there for. And but that was, something that I was out there helping. I really enjoyed helping people. Another time, I did a prisoner transport. They, I don't know what it was, whether they had a bus breakdown or something like that at the courthouse, but I get this call. I was downtown, and I get this call, please proceed to the courthouse and meet Officer so-and-so for a special run. They're going to give me directions on where to go. And so I go down to the courthouse, I pull up there, and I'm like, okay, well, this sounds interesting. And the officer comes out, and he says to me, okay, we're gonna transport prisoners from court back to the jailhouse. And I'm like, oh my God, is this gonna be safe? So I'm like, okay. you know. And so up comes this elevator out from the street, you know, one of those street level elevators, and they bring out, you know, it's like 3 officers and like 4 prisoners or whatnot, and they're all chained up and everything. So they bring them up, they sit them down, and they chain them to the seats in front of them. And then a couple officers stay on the bus, a couple more go down and get more people, and I don't know, we got probably about a dozen inmates, and then I had to drive them to the jail and everything. And it was just fun stuff like that, stuff that was unexpected, stuff that I really didn't know what was going to happen that day. And so I really, really enjoyed that. And I gave that all up so that I could, you know, pursue what I thought was the right thing for me to do. And so I'm just saying that, in essence, make sure that you that it is the right thing for you to leave college. And I think that experience is very valuable and education is very valuable. And you need a good combination of both, because you can't be 100% education and be effective without having real world experience. And you can't be effective on everything in your business or in your job or whatever if all you have is real world experience and you don't have any education to back it up. You know, I didn't have the education in business to back up my stuff, and so it failed even though we were successful. Isn't that an oxymoron? You know? So you know, anyway, so I think that's it. And you know, speaking of oxymorons and everything, I just want to leave you with 2 words right here at the end. And so just something for you to think about. And it totally has to do with oxymorons. And so you may get it, you may not, but jumbo shrimp. If you made it this far in the video, you may as well subscribe.